Welcome to the Summer Food Service Program webinar. The topic of this session is Rural Non-Congregate Meal Service. The Summer EBT and Rural Non-Congregate Summer Meal Option Interim Final Rule was published on December 29, 2023. This interim final rule amends the SFSP and the NSLP SSO regulations to codify the flexibility for rural program operators to provide non-congregate meal service in the SFSP and the SSO. This rule also established regulations and codifies the Summer EBT program in the Code of Federal Regulations. This webinar will review the rural non-congregate meal service requirements for the Summer Food Service Program. This includes sponsors and site eligibility, when to offer non-congregate meals, the various meal distribution models, meal service requirements, site monitoring, civil rights, meal counting, and financial management requirements. We will also discuss how meals will be claimed, the next steps to applying, and best practices. I also want to note that much of this content is also applicable to the NSLP Seamless Summer Option, or SSO. The purpose of providing non-congregate meals in rural areas is to broaden access to nutritious meals in the summer months, especially in areas where it is more difficult for children to participate in congregate meals or when there is a lack of facilities to host congregate meals. We know that there are benefits when children are able to eat meals on site during summer schools, summer rec programs, vacation Bible school, and the like. These locations are a vital part of the summer nutrition program, providing a sense of community and enrichment opportunities for kids. Therefore, sponsors are encouraged to continue to provide these opportunities when feasible and utilize the non-congregate option to expand their summer nutrition programs beyond congregate meal settings when possible. There are no restrictions on providing non-congregate meal service based on sponsor type. Sponsors can include public and private nonprofit school food authorities, units of local, municipal, county, or state government, tribal governments, and private nonprofit organizations that are in good standing with the state agency. Do note that camps are still required to provide a regularly scheduled food service as part of an organized program for enrolled children, and that meal program is generally congregate in nature. However, there may be situations when non-congregate meal service for enrolled children is sensible, such as service of a third meal if a congregate meal service is not provided. What does in good standing mean? Good standing means a status of a program operator that meets its program responsibilities, is current with its financial obligations, and if applicable, has fully implemented all corrective actions within the required timeframe. One requirement of non-congregate meal service is that non-congregate meals cannot be provided when congregate meal service is available. Therefore, USDA provided some guidelines to consider when congregate meals are being provided in the community. One being the physical conditions or barriers to congregate sites. This may include a variety of things, but one example could be if the congregate site is located on the outside of town on a busy highway and is not easily accessed by children that do not have transportation. A site within the center of the community could possibly provide non-congregate meals to children. Another consideration is if the congregate site that is operating cannot serve additional children in the community based on the capacity of the serving area. In addition to these, we could also look at the days of the week and the types of meals that are being offered at the congregate site. Say, for instance, the congregate site is offering breakfast and lunch Monday through Friday. The non-congregate site could potentially provide meals for the weekend. And finally, some sites may just not be appealing to specific groups, so those children would not attend the congregate site. When congregate meals are being provided in a community, the Office of Nutrition Programs and Services will work with you to determine if and how non-congregate meals can be provided. Here is a list of additional circumstances that may call for offering non-congregate meals. One may be to offer non-congregate meals after summer school or any enrolled programming has ended. Lack of transportation and programming decreases participation and can also make the congregate meal service not financially viable. Another is when a rural area does not have a facility to use to host a congregate site. This could be a situation where there is a rural trailer park that could potentially be a congregate site, but lacks anywhere for the children to sit and eat. In this instance, non-congregate meals could be provided to children living there all summer. Also, there may be cases when a sponsor cannot staff a congregate program, but has enough resources to prepare and provide non-congregate meals once or twice a week. And as mentioned previously, non-congregate meals could be provided when the only other summer meal sites are closed to community participation and there are no other means to host a congregate site. The second key requirement to being able to offer non-congregate meals is that they can only be provided in an area that is determined as rural based on the USDA Rural Designation Map. This map has recently been updated to include much more data to determine the rural status. Therefore, many more areas within New Hampshire are now considered rural. The map will be updated annually going forward. However, once an area is determined to be rural, it can continue to provide non-congregate meals for up to 5 summers, regardless if the map has changed. This is similar to being able to use area eligibility data to qualify a site for 5 years. Rural non-congregate sites may operate in an area that is considered area eligible, meaning the site is within the attendance area of a school with 50% or more of the children being eligible for free or reduced price meals, or within a census tract that qualifies. In this situation, the meals are provided to all children 18 and under free of charge, and all meals are reimbursable. Rural non-congregate sites operating in areas that are not area eligible can only receive reimbursement for meals served to children that are eligible for free or reduced price meals. Meals can be served to children who are not income eligible, but the sponsor must either charge for the meal or offset the cost of the meal with alternate funding that does not include other funding from other child nutrition programs. So far, we've covered the who, when, and where to offer non-congregate meals. Now we'll move on to the how. There are 2 meal models to choose from, either meal pickup from a meal site or delivery to the participant's home. Meal pickup is when meals are packaged and taken home for children to eat later. This can be done through a grab-and-go type curbside service or take-home packages or backpacks provided to children after programming at a site has ended. In this situation, the meals must be packaged and portioned to allow children to carry the food from the summer meal site to their homes. Home delivery is when meals are delivered directly to the home. Delivery could be completed by the sponsor utilizing sponsor staff or volunteers, a delivery service, or even by mail in very rural areas. When choosing the pickup model, the sponsor may serve meals directly to children or to parents or guardians without the children present. When meals are served only to children, the site will operate like most open sites, with the exception of the child being able to leave the site with their meal or meals to be consumed later. It does get a little more involved when choosing to allow parents or guardians to pick up meals without the children present. In this situation, it is required that the sponsor only provide the number of meals allowed for the number of children living in the household. In order to do that, the sponsor will need to establish a process to determine the number of children in the household. One way to do this is if the sponsor is a school, is to ask the households that are interested in picking up the meals to sign up ahead of time and indicate how many children are within their household. The school can then check that number against the school database to verify how many children are in the household. Schools and non-school sponsors who could also request that families sign up for the meals with the children in attendance ahead of time or the first time that meals are provided. Our office can help sponsors with determining the best method for your situation. Sponsors who do allow for parent-guardian pickup can allow other adults that care for their children to pick up meals on their behalf. This should be established ahead of time so that at the time of the pickup, the site staff know that it's okay to provide them with the meals. Adults who are not the parent, guardian, or not providing care for a child cannot pick up meals on behalf of other families. The other distribution model is home delivery. Sponsors using this model are required to invite households to participate and get consent from the child's parent or guardian prior to delivering the meals. This can be done via the household filling out a form, online or hard copy, or by consenting via email. At the time, the sponsor will need to confirm the number of children living in the household, just like what's required for parent and guardian pickup. When delivering to homes, the child does not need to be present at the time of delivery as long as the sponsor has obtained the household's written consent to deliver meals and has verified the current address. If the meals are shelf-stable, no one need be present as long as the address has been verified. As mentioned previously, non-congregate meals may be provided at a pickup site or at a child's home that are not within an area that is considered area eligible. These sites are called conditional non-congregate sites. The sponsor must confirm the number of children 18 and under in the household that are eligible for free or reduced price meals. School sponsors may use current eligibility data in their school database. They may also collect household income eligibility forms for children not in their database. Non-school sponsors must collect household income eligibility forms to determine eligibility or sign a memorandum of understanding with the local school district to obtain student eligibility data for eligibility determination purposes. When serving only children eligible for free or reduced price meals, the sponsor must take measures to prevent over-identification. Now we'll review the meal service requirements for rural non-congregate meals. Sponsors and sites may provide up to 2 non-congregate meal services in any combination other than lunch and supper for any day of the week in which congregate meal service is not available. This does include weekends. Sponsors may also distribute meals for a single day or for multiple days at a time. When providing for multiple days at a time, the number of days will be determined on a case-by-case basis during the application process, but will not exceed 10 days for pickup and 5 days for home delivery. Sponsors may also provide bulk food items, however, only to the extent that the bulk items require minimal preparation by the child. Meal service times for non-congregate sites must be established and approved within the site application. Meal service time rules regarding when breakfast is served or the requirement for the 1-hour lapse does not apply to non-congregate sites. Meal pattern requirements remain the same for non-congregate meals. School sponsors may use the summer food service program meal pattern or the meal patterns used during the regular school year. Non-school sponsors are required to follow the summer food service program meal pattern. At this time, only school sponsors are allowed to utilize offer versus serve. New Hampshire has submitted a waiver to request to waive the requirement to USDA for non-school sponsors, so please stay tuned. Like congregate sites, sponsors must provide accommodations for special dietary needs when required. Sponsors may choose to provide food items in bulk, but with the following restrictions. The meals must require minimal preparation by the child. Required food components for each reimbursable meals are served. All food items that contribute to a reimbursable meal are clearly identifiable. Menus are provided and clearly indicate the food items and portion sizes for each reimbursable meal. Heating or warming is minimal. Sponsors may offer food items that require further preparation only with state agency and USDA approval. The maximum number of reimbursable meals provided to a child does not exceed the number of meals that could be provided over a 5-calendar day period. As with all types of sites, non-congregate meals must be counted at the point of service by type. Sponsors must use the non-congregate service multiple meal distribution form provided by our office. The meal service model and how many days worth of meals served at one time tends to dictate which forms to use. When serving one meal type directly to the children, the regular tally meal count form may be used. If serving multi-day meals directly to children, the multi-day meal service form must be used. When serving multi-day meals to parents or guardians, you may need to use a sign-up roster to confirm those picking up meals are receiving the correct number of meals for the household and check off when the meals are picked up, or use a combination of the roster and multi-day meal service count form. For home delivery, sponsors may want to use the delivery roster that has the number of meals delivered by type to each household, or a combination of roster and multi-day meal count forms. Consolidating meal count multi-day meals for the claim reimbursement can be confusing Be sure to use a form that best suits your needs and have a system in place that involves another person double checking the consolidated meal counts before filing claims. All civil rights requirements apply to non-congregate sites. Sponsors of open non-congregate sites must make the community aware of the meal sites, dates of operation, and times of meal services, including delivery and/or pickup times. Conditional non-congregate sites are required to notify participants of the availability of free meals and if an income eligibility form is needed. Each site is required to display the And Justice for All poster. For home delivery, the poster must be prominently displayed, such as in a window on all vehicles. Sponsors are required to collect race and ethnicity data for non-congregate sites. Due to the nature of the service, it may not be possible to collect data from participants directly. In that case, completing the race and ethnicity data from using aggregate data is acceptable. The requirements for monitoring non-congregate sites are the same as monitoring congregate sites, with the exception that when a returning congregate site starts serving non-congregate meals for the first time, the site will be considered new in terms of the monitoring required. All monitoring is required to be documented on the form located on our website unless an alternate form is approved for use by our office. The form can be found on the SFSP webpage. The purpose of the pre-operational visit is to determine if the site has the capability and the facilities to provide the meal service planned for the number of children anticipated to be served. Pre-operational visits are required to be conducted prior to operation for new sites, returning sites that experienced problems the previous year, and existing sites that are new to non-congregate meal service. If you have a non-congregate site that operated in the prior year, a pre-operational visit is not required. Site visits are to be conducted within the first 2 weeks of operation for new sites, sites identified as having operational problems the prior year, and sites new to non-congregate meal service. These visits are to ensure the meal service is operating smoothly and any apparent problems are immediately resolved. The site review must be conducted within the first 4 weeks of operation. This is required for all sites every year to determine if the site is meeting all of the program requirements. Monitors must observe a complete meal service from beginning to end, including delivery or preparation of meals, the meal service, and the cleanup after meals. If a sponsor wants to conduct the first 2-week visit of operation, it can replace the required site visit for new sites or sites that had problems in the prior year. By doing this, the sponsor is limiting the number of trips to the site as long as key issues are not found that will require follow-up. Follow-up reviews to ensure corrective action has been taken is required when any key findings are identified. When follow-up occurs depends on the severity of the problem. When observing a pickup site, it is required that the monitor observe meal prep and meal packaging of the meals to ensure the meal is meeting the meal pattern requirements and that meals are prepped and held according to the standard operating procedures for non-congregate meals. Monitors will also need to review documentation of production to ensure that the meal is fully documented so that it can be claimed. Finally, the monitor will need to observe the setup in the meal distribution line and meal distribution from start to end for a full review. When observing meal service, you will be checking to ensure that all staff or volunteers have been trained, that meals are served during the approved meal service time, that meals are served directly to children and or the parents and guardians that have been verified for participation, that meals are provided as planned, meaning the components of the meals, number of meals provided at one time, etc., that meals are counted at the point of service, that meals are provided without discrimination, and that the And Justice for All poster is displayed. All food service staff and or volunteers must be following food safety guidelines and handle leftover meals according to standard operating procedures. For home delivery, observe meal prep and packaging of the meals to ensure that meal is meeting the meal pattern requirements, and that the meals are prepped and held according to your standard operating procedures for non-congregate meals. Also review documentation of production to ensure the meal is fully documented so it can be claimed. Observation of the meal service will be a bit different. Be sure to observe meals being loaded into the delivery vehicles, ride along, or follow the delivery truck driver. When monitoring the home delivery, look to see if all staff and volunteers have been trained. Check to ensure that meals are delivered during the approved meal service time and only to households that have consented to meal delivery. That meals are provided as planned, meaning all meal components are offered and staff are providing the correct number of days of meals, if applicable. That meals are counted at the point of service using the systems that staff have been trained on. That meals are provided without discrimination, and that the And Justice for All poster is displayed on a door or a window of the vehicle, and that food service staff and/or volunteers are following standard operating procedures for food safety and sanitation. Once approved to operate non-congregate sites, the sponsor will complete a site application within the Summer Food Service Program application in the My NHDOE system, following directions provided by our office. This will allow for the ability to report non-congregate meals separate from congregate meals within the claim for reimbursement, if both types of sites are operated. As mentioned previously, all non-congregate meals served to children 18 and under and disabled adults attending a public or private educational program at sites that are rural and area eligible are to be provided free of charge and are eligible for reimbursement. These meals will be reimbursed at the self-prep rural rate. If a site is rural but not area eligible, only the meals served to children and disabled adults attending a public or private educational program may be provided free of charge and submitted for reimbursement. These meals are reimbursed at the same self-prep rural rate of reimbursement. The cost of food, non-food supplies, food service labor, transportation of meals, etc., related to non-congregate meal service are allowable summer food service program expenses. Sponsors are required to include these costs within the nonprofit food service account and maintain expense documentation just as it's required for congregate meals. Unallowable costs include, but are not limited to, the cost of meals served to participants that are not eligible for free or reduced price meals at conditional non-congregate sites or sites that are not area eligible, and meals served to non-program adults. Now that you've learned all the ins and outs of non-congregate meals, let's take a look at the next steps. First, if new to rural non-congregate meals, we recommend that you contact our office. You can contact myself or Patty Kerrigan. Contact information is shown on the screen. For any SSO questions, please contact Maddie Parker. Please contact us to set up a time to confirm site eligibility and discuss your rural non-congregate meal plans. Once your rural non-congregate meal plans have been determined, you will complete the Rural Non-Congregate Integrity and Meal Service Plan Google form to communicate these meal plans to ONPS for approval. Once approved, you will be instructed to update the Summer Food Service Program application in My NHDOE to include these non-congregate sites. As with other sites, be sure to notify the health department of the non-congregate sites and the community of the availability of non-congregate meals, providing instructions to sign up if necessary. Here is a list of some of the additional information collected in the Rural Non-Congregate Integrity and Meal Service Plan Google form. We'll need the address of each non-congregate site so that we can confirm that it's rural and if area eligible or not, which meal distribution model or models will be used, so meal pickup by children only, meal pickup by parents and guardians, or home delivery, the process for verifying the number of children in the household for pickup, and how household consent will be obtained for home delivery. The method used to ensure the parents and/or guardians picking up meals on behalf of children have been verified, whether the site will provide congregate meals in addition to non-congregate meals, and how many days worth of meals will be distributed at a time, and how the meal count will be taken. In addition, rural non-congregate sponsors will need to submit a sample menu indicating the menu items and planned portion sizes to demonstrate the meal pattern requirements will be met. The menu should provide a variety of items to ensure dietary guidelines have been met and must require minimal preparation on the part of the participant. Please include storage and prep instructions if distributing meals for multiple days. Now let's review some best practices for rural non-congregate meals. It is important these meals are provided that are easily identifiable to the participants and that they require minimal preparation. Consider meal quality and storage when deciding on distributing multiple days' worth of meals at one time. Dating the packages and providing a deadline for discarding the meal items will help families keep track of meal items fresh when multi-day meals are provided. For pickup sites, consider how meals will be packaged that would allow children to take meals home with them. Here are a few more things to think about. When developing a sign-up form, ask only the information needed to verify the number of children in the household and for planning for how many meals to prepare. Let families know of your summer meal plans as early as possible. In very rural areas, consider distribution points from a number of locations to lessen the distance households must travel to pick up meals. Work with other organizations in your community to help spread the word about all summer meal opportunities. Thank you for listening to this webinar, and please remember to contact us to get started. Thank you.